Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 45 of Hack Your Thoughts. We're on our series, The Hidden Ways We Shrink Ourselves. And today we're tackling a really powerful topic: bullies, manipulators, and liars. Why do they try to shrink you? And more importantly, how do you take back control? So let's dive in. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling small, like someone took your confidence, took your power, or twisted it into doubt, made you second guess yourself, and kind of just handed it back to you? Uh, Maybe it was a friend, family member, maybe it's your spouse, your partner, your boss, someone who with just few words or maybe a look made you feel less than. But here's the truth: that wasn't you. That was about them. So, why does this matter? Whether it's bullies, liars, manipulators, they all try to shrink others to maintain control. What they try to do is project their own fears, their insecurities onto you so that they don't have to face them. And when they sense confidence, they try to poke holes in it. When they see potential, they try to dim that, to lessen it. So while you're listening to our conversation, here are some key questions that, ponder. Just ponder over this here. Have you ever believed something about yourself just because someone else put it there? When someone made you feel small, what was actually happening beneath the surface? And what do bullies and manipulators gain by making you shrink? So today's hack is we're going to call it what it is. Instead of shrinking, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What are they afraid of? What's their weakness? Because bullies thrive on power. When you stop giving it to them, they lose control. It feels like, they need to be fueled to be a bully. And so when we give in, we're fueling. That's fuel for them. But when we take back our power, that's when it diminishes their power. So let's break this down. What's really happening when someone tries to shrink you? And more importantly, how do we stop them from succeeding? I have two powerful voices joining me today to unpack this. But first, a quick break. Stay right there. Welcome back. As promised, I have a powerhouse panel joining me today. So let's start with some introductions. I have KJ and Steve. Why don't you introduce yourselves? You want to go, Steve?
Yeah, I am Steve Tulowitzki. I am honored to be a two-time guest on this podcast. I think two times, and a many-time guest in Chloe's life and KJ's life. If I was being attacked by a bully, there's nobody I'd rather have than Dr. Chloe Timothy and Kevin Anthony Johnson. I work as a leadership coach. I just found out today 13 years in consulting and doing project work. And now this is my 13th year as a coach and leadership development facilitator. So I'm in the second half of my career's life.
Wow, 13 years.
13
That's a nice
years.
long time.
Yeah, very lucky number, it turns out.
Yeah, yeah.
Very lucky. Well, I'm Kevin Anthony Johnson. Thank you for the mini introduction, Steve. And I'm excited to be a part of this series. And I was on just one episode back, so I'm excited to be back and excited to jump into the meat and potatoes of this topic that we're talking about today. I'm hailing from Costa Rica and formerly in Chicago, and I am also a leadership and life coach for the last 25 years of my life. And I can say it just keeps getting better and better.
Mm.
Now, I have to say, thank you both for introducing yourselves. Meat and potatoes? I've never heard that before.
Hmm.
So
Well,
what is so just kind of let's just enlighten me before we dive in.
well, see, there is a time when you feed children and babies what they're capable of eating. So you feed a baby milk, you feed a baby food. It's already been kind of mashed up and prepared for them to eat because it's easy to digest. But then you dig into something when they get a little bit older and they start having bigger hungers and bigger appetites, and you need to give them some meat and some potatoes and something that's really going to put some substance in their system. So I'm excited about having some meat and potatoes this evening.
Ah, okay, okay. So let's just pretend we're at the dinner table and we're eating meat and potatoes and we're sharing this meal with whoever's
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
I might watch all 45 episodes just to have soup to nuts.
Yeah.
Gonna have more dinner analogies. Soup to nuts. That's the whole meal.
Steve, only you, only you.
And Steve,
Okay.
why are the nuts last?
Yeah.
It's an old tradition.
Oh, okay, okay. Is that
Yeah.
like dessert?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's helps you digest.
There you go. Okay,
Oh,
okay. That makes
wow.
sense. That makes sense. I
Or
never
I
knew
Wow.
just,
that.
or I just made that up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, go ahead, do it. Yeah, make it up. Okay. So I'm so thrilled that the both of you are on the show today. So let's start with what it looks like when someone shrinks others. What do you think drives someone to make others feel small?
Mm.
Who wants to go?
I
KJ?
heard a great quote from uh, a phenomenal writer, Toni Morrison. She said something like, um, "If you have to, in order to feel tall, you have to stand on someone else's shoulders, then you've got a problem." And I think the bully comes from a place of feeling small. So in order to make themselves feel big, they have to make someone else smaller than them. I think that's the functional element of when someone shifts from being just mean to being a bully. When they
Hmm.
feel like they have to place someone else lower than them and hold them there in order to sustain a high self-esteem.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like it. Just in order to feel big, somebody else has to take the small
Hmm.
position, the smaller position. Steve.
I have to believe it's uh, in part a trauma response.
Hmm.
There's this simple saying that hurt people. And it strikes me that shrunk people shrink people.
Hmm.
Mm.
Uh, you know, whoever has been hurt and damaged and bullied themselves in a place where they don't feel like they have control, as soon as they have a little bit of a place where they have some control, that might be all that they know how to do. And the only thing that makes them safe before they get bullied again, they're going to
Mhm.
be the aggressors. Uh, that's that's what occurs to me. So it's a kind of insecurity from not having a place where you really feel safe, and that
Mm. And that reminds me in abusive relationships, and I've been in one, they always say the abused becomes the abuser. And I think when I heard that so many times, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I tried my best, went to counseling and therapy and, talk to you guys just so that I didn't become that person. And it was hard work.
hmm. Well,
It's hard.
that is the hope. I often think, when I'm living my life properly, the question can be, what cycle am I here to interrupt? What
Mm,
cycle of abuse or lack of progress or regression? Well, that if I don't pay attention, I don't do the hard work, I don't have Chloe's and KJ's in my life. I'm likely to perpetuate that. That's how where real change comes from. Is I'm going to stop this cycle. There's a movie I just watched on the plane on my trip to Mexico City recently, and it's called "It Ends with Us."
mm,
And that's really what it is about.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
It ends with us. Yeah.
yeah. It's breaking the cycle.
I also
What
think
would
there's
you
a
say are some common? Say again. Go ahead,
well, I
KJ.
think there's also an element of a power dynamic. Like I think of folks that are bullies in certain environments, but not in all.
Yeah.
And if they don't feel like they have power in one space, they will go somewhere else where they think they can wield power. And they may not be bullies at home, or they may not be bullies at work, but
Mhm.
because they feel powerless somewhere at work, per se, they may go home and play the role of a bully because that's where
Mm.
they feel they have the most power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree entirely with you, Steve. I think hurt people do hurt people. I think shrunk folks do shrink other folks. I think it's
Mm.
a perfect way to look at this with empathy, but
Mm,
also
Yes. Mm.
equity
Mm.
that they are doing harm, but
Mm.
also they have been harmed.
mm,
And so it creates this cycle. And if we don't do something to stop it, the
Mm.
people who they harm could be the people who become the next bullies.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the perpetrators or the bullies or the abusers have been, I'm going to use that word, victims of circumstance. And they look also, it's attention. Somebody help me. I may not even know that I need help. Somebody
Yes.
help me, help heal me from my hurt so that I don't hurt others.
Mm.
Um, so, what would you say are some common tactics people use, either subtly or overtly, to diminish others? What would you say are some ways, Steve?
Well, I was hoping you were going to ask KJ first because I wanted to interrupt him. I've got a better answer than that because that's one way, you don't let other people talk, you interrupt them, you diminish them, you demean them. I was on a call. I'm fortunate enough to be in one of these cycle interrupting places. It's a men's group that I joined last year, and we have a call every week. And somebody was sharing this past week how they got berated as a child for being late. We were talking about ADHD, something that you just can't control. And when you are berated for for who you are, who you feel like you are, that's a real bully move, and it really causes trauma.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a tough word. Agony is a really tough word talking about pain, and I think berating is probably the toughest word
Mm,
I can think of right now about what a bully does.
yeah. Yeah. KJ?
I love it. I think it's so true. And I think it shows up in subtler ways in more high stakes environments where
Mm,
the berating comes across as, "Hey, I have some feedback for you."
Uh,
You ever hear that one?
mhm.
It comes as legitimate feedback, but
yeah.
what it really is keeping you in your place as
Yeah.
they see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What that looks
Backhanded
like.
compliments. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so just the idea that, for a black person, you've achieved a lot in this role. Hmm.
Mm,
Put down or praise? I
yeah.
don't
Mm.
know how to take that, but okay. Say more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's nonetheless, it's subtle. It digs at confidence. It digs at credibility, and that's what bullies do. They don't need to be outright bullies. They just subtly chip away at your esteem and your credibility to make you begin to question your competence, your efficacy, your output, your excellence, and you start to doubt, like, maybe I am less than what I think I am. Maybe I'm thinking too
Uh-huh.
highly of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the aim of a bully.
Yeah.
It's really good. This is like high end math, PhD level bullies. The term that has come into the conscious collective awareness, I think, more recently is gaslighting.
Mm, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Make you believe
And
something
the,
that's
Mi-
isn't true, but just
mhm.
convincing. Say it over, say it enough, and eventually you start to question whether what you think is true.
And a
Yeah.
really good gaslighter can make you question your own motives. You can think that your own purpose is an evil purpose, and that's why you're doing all these things that you may not even be doing. There's one thing in the conversation in the sphere that I'm noticing, and we're kind of otherizing bullies. It's like, what did they do? What did they do? As if we haven't been bullies. I don't know about y'all, but when I was growing up, probably sometime today, I was a bully. I'm sure there was a bully in here who had a lot of comments that through my training and maturity, and maybe I got some good sleep or some good news or something, I kept them in. But it's not like I'm not a bully and haven't been a bully and don't have that capacity within me. So I just wanted to acknowledge they're everywhere, and they're even likely in here.
More
Yes.
likely than we may want to admit, Steve. And
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
appreciate your candor, because
Yeah.
I think it's the possibility that I could be a bully at any time that actually makes me believe the bully when they bully me. It's that I am also suppressing in some way my own capacity to be a bully in service of society. So when it happens to me, I start to question, well, he might be right, because I actually do have some of those tendencies to think too highly of myself or to put other people down in my mind before I say it out loud. So it's another subtle
It's subtle.
way to weave itself into our minds without us ever having to admit, oh no, are you talking about me? Me, no, never, not me. I can never be that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's they are doing this to me. They all doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to anyone. They doing it to me. So if everyone is right and everyone's a so-called victim, then who is the bully? Who is the
Well,
bully?
see, this is that classic drama triangle I shared last time we talked, and that everyone feels like they are the one that's being pointed at, that they're being blamed, shamed, or ridiculed, or placed in powerless situations. So in that moment, the only way out is through, and that is to own what is actually yours. So if a bully starts talking to me about things that they think I am doing wrong or accusing me of doing certain things, I can diffuse it just by saying, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Now
You
what?
know,
Now what?
Or that,
and
Now
it's
what else do you have to say about that, man? And
so
you don't feed it, you diffuse it, you put water on it.
yeah. So and that brings us to the bully's mindset, because that's what we're talking. What's happening in the shrinker's mindset? Um, do you think people shrink others when they bullying? Are they doing it consciously, or is it more unconsciously? Are they just doing it because that's what they do? What do you think?
I think there's a spectrum there. I, and,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
not to
I love the
not
word
to not to
spectrum. The word spectrum, everything's on a spectrum. Empathy
yeah,
is on a spectrum.
exactly.
Everything's
So
on a spectrum.
you got
Yes.
your bully who really wants to be a bully, and that's their MO. That's how they get through life. That's their main strategy. And then you got your bullies who are kind of like reactive, and they're not conscious of what they're doing, but they're reacting to some scenario, some circumstance, some influence, some impact, and they're doing it because it's the thing that they know to do: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? And so the bully could be in a fight or flight mode. We don't know.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the middle, there's more and more or less responsibility. So you head over to this person over here who's choosing to be a bully. They are being fully responsible for their bullyhood. And the folks way over here aren't even conscious of it. And so somewhere in between, I think we find ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you were doing this, I was thinking of Knight Rider. That because I think at different times of the day, different times of life, I'm at a different place on that spectrum. the other analogy that comes to me is that bullying might be like breathing. Sometimes breathing happens, and sometimes we breathe. And Chloe, as you're talking about the mindset, I'm going to the times when I can think back on me bullying people. I think it was, I mean, obviously it comes out of fear, and often really the fear of belonging. I'm afraid that they won't like me or I won't belong, or so maybe I make a joke or something that seems funny, like just like KJ said, to put myself a little bit higher, to try and grab some status so that I might fit in and not get pushed away. As human beings, tribal species, as our brains were forming way back when in the Paleozoic era, I'm probably wrong on that. That was survival. If we were excommunicated from our tribe, we were done. So I think that's part of the mindset too. And sometimes it might just be survival instinct. I'm breathing really fast because I feel really threatened. But then I think you're right, KJ. On the one end of the spectrum, you've got people who are in top performance mode. They're not survival mode. They are the prize fighters who are bullying on purpose for sport. Or,
Bullying on purpose.
Bullying on purpose for manipulation. They're attached to some outcome that they have to achieve, or their whole identity is at risk. And they've learned how to do this really well, and it can be really effective, sadly.
Yeah. And it brings me to something else, because when I think about people that are bullies, I think about, and like we said, I'm going to put myself in the category too. I'm not free from that. But when you said on purpose, some of them really enjoy doing it. They get a kick out of bullying people. They enjoy it. It fuels them. That's what they live on and thrive on. And the more they see, the more they see others being put down, or the power they have over them, the better they feel. Which is, even though we're the hurt people, even though they've been hurt, maybe it comes from a trauma place, we want to have compassion. But then how do we balance that compassion with, no, you are wrong. You are wrong.
I'm a believer that there is always a place for compassion, but it's not when someone's foot is on your neck.
Yes.
And if someone's putting their foot on my neck, then do what you need to do to free yourself. And then if you have the wherewithal to confront your bully, confront them. But I don't think there's anything wrong with fully responding to someone with their foot on your neck.
Yeah.
Because now you're becoming the actual victim. And, the person who is operating from a place of intentional bullying isn't someone who is somehow, flawed in their thinking. They have used bullying as a strategy instead of a reactivity, right? And I think there is a place where, I think as Black folks, we have become accustomed to giving our kids the talk. When a police officer pulls you over, you say, yes, sir. You comply. You do all the things. Well, what have we seen? I'm not saying all police officer is like this, but when we see these instances of an officer going far beyond their duty and accusing some kid of something that they haven't done, or the neighborhood watch person who tracked down Trayvon Martin holding some Skittles in an Arizona tea, and he fights back because he doesn't know who this guy is. Who was the bully?
Yeah.
And in our justice system, they determined that he wasn't a bully. He was just doing what he was doing, defending his space in Florida law. But there's some bullying going on when you're attacking an unarmed kid with Skittles, and he doesn't know who you are, and you haven't announced who you are and what your authority is over him. So there's a real dynamic there where a bully has perceived authority and uses it to dominate over someone else.
Yeah.
There's a different thing going on if you're in the schoolyard and a bully has some issues at home, and the only place he feels powerful is on the playground. And so he bullies some of his classmates on the playground and does something, unsocially acceptable. Very different context.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to make those broad distinctions between how bullying can show up, but also the impact and outcomes that can come from an act of bullying with intention and act of bullying out of reactivity.
So, you saying you're talking about the schoolyard, and I'm imagining the schoolyard. And I keep thinking, okay, imagine this person that's a bully. He or she knows exactly who to bully. They identify the people that can be bullied.
Mhm.
So, which brings me to something else in the context. What are they looking for? What are the characteristics or attributes that this person has for them to say, that's the one I'm going to bully? I can take that one down.
I mean, what comes up for me is maybe they're looking for it, or maybe it's unconscious. Maybe it's just instinctual. Um, as we were talking about, KJ, you were almost talking about feeling guilty when someone bullies you because you could have been the bully, like you identify with that. If we go from the premise that probably, bullied people bully people, they recognize the things in themselves that made them vulnerable to that bully that brought them up, or came after them earlier or in a different context, and so they can smell it almost in other people. And I don't know that it's a checklist of let me do some regression analysis on all the kids in the playground to see which are most bullyable. I imagine it's a kind of instinctive thing. And there are probably, we could probably all come up with some ideas of if we're casting a movie, we know what kind of character we might pick who gets bullied.
I am tempted with this.
Hmm.
I want us to go from the playground to another ground.
Take us there.
Let's go to work, Chloe.
Let's go from the playground to another ground, because we're talking about children. Let's talk about adults, and let's talk about people in power and how they bully. There's a book that Adam Grant read. I don't know if you all read it, The Power Moves. Really powerful. And he talks about two things. He said, people have power and they can do whatever they want to do if they have a position, a title, and if they have money. Because now they have the power. That speaks. So titles have a voice, money has a voice. So let's take it to another playground. How do we deal with leaders in the community, in the world, in our world, that bully people?
I'm gonna paraphrase you mentioned Adam Grant. My favorite book of the moment is Mel Robbins' the Let Them theory. Yeah, some people have authority. It's been vested in them because they got elected or because they got promoted or something, and people get to have their opinions. They get to be as terrible as they want to be and can be at that position, and they get to abuse that power. It's their right so long as they have that position. And I think Mel would say, let them be horrible leaders. If I get so wrapped up in all the things that they're doing wrong, I give them complete control over my emotions and my ability, and I lose track of my purpose, and they've distracted me from all the things that I could do for the people in my life. So if I let them be horrible leaders because they've actually somehow earned that right, if the system is good or bad that put them there, that frees me up for the most important part of let them is let me. Let me now decide what I'm going to do in this case. Maybe let me organize ombudsman at work, or the staff council to stand up for the rights, or let's create a union at a workplace, or let's protest the leadership somewhere. Let's go to town halls where they are. Like what can I do? But if I don't let them be horrible, I'm gonna not be able to let me do anything about it.
KJ, let
And
me hear what. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's a perfect response, and I wonder if Mel Robbins has ever studied Aikido. Aikido has a principle of um, leveraging another person's energy against them. So you don't resist someone who's attacking you. You use their energy to redirect them to something else. And I've seen, a 135-pound woman flip over a 250-pound guy who was trying to attack her, not because she was strong, but because she simply knew to just lean away instead of lean in and take that energy he's throwing at her, trying to bully her, and put him on the ground. And so I think there's some spiritual principles to this that are bound in the idea that when Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek," it wasn't that idea wasn't just to expose himself to another blow. That idea was a cultural thing, and that idea of turning the other cheek is grounded in the idea that when someone reprimanded you in that culture, they typically used their right hand, and so they would come across your cheek in that way. But if you turn your other cheek to them, they can't hit you the same way. They have to hit you in a way that's disrespectful and that reveals who they are. And so the more you expose them, as Steve said, let them be a bad leader. Let them make bad decisions. Let them be domineering in whatever they're going to do. The more exposure you give to them, the more shame they begin to carry. Because the direct approach doesn't get you a result with a bully.
Yeah.
It gets you into a fight.
Yes. Now, if we continue to let them, and then let's go to something that Jesus did. You know, the Pharisees and Sadducees were there condemning a woman, and he stood up for her. He stood up. She let them because she was doing nothing. But he had to say something. He had to challenge them. So we may let them, but we still have to challenge. Because if we don't challenge, where is the voice of advocacy?
This is let me. This is the let me part.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a different scenario in which the bullied is not responding to the bully. Someone else is watching the bully take place and intervening on the behalf of the person being bullied. That's a different scenario, and that is a responsible action by someone who's seeing someone abused by a bully. I think that's perfectly relevant and necessary. But if you're the one being bullied, you don't necessarily have that authority to just come back and fight for yourself, because the point is they've picked you because they have something that they can hold you to as a weakness.
Yeah. You know, and I'm going to go to a personal story. You know, my marriage. I let him. For 25 years, I let him. And it destroyed and it killed me inside. Until I was like, enough is enough. And I had to say something, and I had to face the bully. It was a face off. Until I did that, then only did I stand in my power. But I had to face off. It took everything. It took all the courage. It took everything in me. But I had so much of anger and resentment and bitterness inside that it fueled me to do a face off. It was the only way that I could take back and bring Chloe back to life. Because I let him for 25 years and I couldn't let him anymore.
And that's the key distinction, is that you saw yourself as, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you saw yourself as deserving of that bullying for that period of time. And the moment you decided you were not that person, he no longer had that power over you. And that's the defining moment in a bullying relationship, is when the bullied begins to realize who they actually are.
Yeah.
and not the person that the bully targeted. Because the bully will target people who they assume and assess as being targets, good targets, unwilling or unable to come back, or they have a reputation, or they have something that they are ashamed of, that they leverage against them. It's that leverage that you take away once you come up with your own identity that's not the same identity that the bully gave you.
So, how do we, for people listening and are being bullied right now, how being manipulated, how do we get them to stand their ground and take back control?
Yeah, I
What
think,
can we?
well, this is the let me part of it. If you just do let them, you don't get the whole story. It's like eating a sandwich with no bottom. It doesn't really work. Uh, and so you know, the bad boss or the husband becomes an ex-husband. You let him be himself, just not around you. You let you take a look at what's going on in my life. You let me uh, take the resources, however much time it takes, learn that enough is enough, and then I start let me figure out how to get out of this situation. And I think the key to this is setting boundaries. And it sounds simple, but it is hard.
And that's what it's
Yeah.
all about. How do we set what are boundaries? How do we get to that point? Because you can say let them and let me, but where's the middle part of the transition? Because that's the part that we need to talk. That's the meat. You talk about the potatoes and the meat. That's the
It's the
potatoes and the
hardest
meat.
question. It's the hardest
That's the
question to
hard
answer.
work.
And that is, in my opinion,
That's the
it's
hard work.
who are you? Who are you? Are you the person that deserves to be bullied? Are you the person that deserves to be treated less than you are supposed to be treated? Are you the person who is undeserving of honor, of dignity, of health, of self-esteem? Or are you the person the bully says you are? And once you come to the decision, it becomes this line in the sand where I am deserving of better treatment than this. I am not deserving of this abuse.
How do we get to that how do people that are experiencing, how do they get
I
there?
can give you some gold if you like. You had meat and potatoes from KJ. I have
Yeah.
some gold. The periodic symbol
Yes.
for a gold is AU. And I think these are the two most important letters, and they stand for awareness and understanding. Until you're aware of the dynamic that is going on, that you're being bullied, that you are maybe bullying someone else, there's this whole chain of bullying, that you are a victim, that you're letting it happen, until you can see what's going on, you have no chance of changing it. You can't change what you don't notice. But awareness isn't enough. Once you see what's going on, you have to really focus now on understanding, on why it's happening over there, on why you're letting it happen. I love what you're saying, KJ, of who are you, right? Understanding who am I? Who am I showing up as? What is their role and what is my role? And when I understand their role, some of it might be illegal, right? I may have authorities, there may be laws, there may be helplines, there may be all kinds of things that can help me there. And when I understand what's going on with me, now I can start to make some choices, and I can understand what let me looks like. So for me, that's like the golden rule, is awareness and understanding. And until you have those, you're sort of powerless to do anything, because they're probably in a position where they're allowed to bully you, and that system is either letting it continue to happen or rewarding it for happening, even worse.
And I want to piggyback
Yeah.
off of
So
that,
the
Steve.
whole this whole
That
go ahead.
this all thrives in isolation.
Mhm.
All of this dynamic thrives when it's just you and the bully. When shame keeps you from looking for help, shame keeps you from reaching out for support and the advocacy that we talked about. When we involve our community, we aren't doing it alone, and we have the added benefit of not having to figure out who we are by ourselves. It's something that our culture in America has lost terribly, in a morbid sense. We've lost our sense of community and individuality. Those two ought to work in tandem, not isolated. So when I'm looking to find out who I am, yes, I have my own resources, but I also have my sister in Austin. I have my cousin in Columbus. I've got my friends in Detroit and coast to coast and around the world who know who I am and can remind me, KJ, who the F are you? Who is this person? Because I could be moaning and groaning and telling them all my woes and how the bully's treating me and how much of a victim I am. And somebody, probably you, Chloe, probably you, Steve, probably Julie, who's not on the line right now, but I'll be talking to one of y'all, and one of y'all will say, hold on. Who the F are you? Who am I talking to? This does not sound like the KJ I know. And we all need that in order to return back to who we are.
100%. Yes, we need that. So, the whole premise of the whole podcast, why I launched it, was how do I hack those thoughts? Because I was stuck there many years of my life and I needed to hack it. I needed to find a way to get into the system here and rewire it. Now, some people listening may not be in community out of fear. And I'll be honest, when I was in my marriage, I can always come back to that. In my marriage, I was terrified to even pick up the phone and call 911. I was on my own. For someone listening, that's right there. What is something that they could do to start believing in themselves in the chaos and in the confusion of their life? What can they say or do? How do they get to the who am I and begin to believe that there is somebody amazing inside and powerful?
Well, I love what KJ was saying. I've heard Alan Watts say you can't smell your own nose, you can't bite your own teeth, you can't feel your own fingerprint. You can't do it in isolation. So the question for me to come up with is, where is some safety? Even if it is journaling, Diary of Anne Frank, write something down. You can see, you've put it on paper. Now you can see a little bit what's going on with you, and that might feel safe. And someday you might share a little bit of those thoughts either on paper or verbally because you spoke to someone. There might be, we had a miscarriage early in our trying to have two kids. We have two beautiful girls. One of them got into an amazing school today. It lights up our life, and we had a miscarriage, and it was a horrible moment for us. And as soon as we started to tell people what happened, everybody had a miscarriage. Nobody talked about that before, but if we found a little bit of courage, bravery to be open and share what was going on with us, a little bit of vulnerability. I think Brene Brown says vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. Then we find out that, man, this is not something wrong with us. This is just a normal part of being alive and being a human being.
And I want to
So
join you in that, Steve.
can I just
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
I just want to finish something that I heard Steve say. So if I was thinking about what's the hack there, from everything I heard you say, the hack would be find your place of safety, find your safety, find a place where it is safe.
Yeah, go
So
from the recursive, intrusive thought that's only spinning here and give it someplace else to spin. Hopefully you
yes,
got a therapist,
find
you
the
got,
safety.
40 relatives across the globe like KJ does, but if you don't, just find some place that's safe.
Yes, yeah, I love that.
And
KJ?
I think the myth that we've been taught in America is that we need to figure it out alone. And that if we can't, then there's something wrong with us. And there's a serious psychosis in that mythology, that a person who is made to be in community, we are made to be in connection with each other, that we should be able to solve all of our problems without said community. And so that singular belief gets in the way of anybody trying to liberate themselves, because we can't liberate ourselves. We must have community to be liberated. Our freedom is only indicated by how free we can move with each other. I can't be free by myself.
What are ways? What are ways for people in this position to find community?
Well, as Steve said, the silence is what made it feel isolating. So the simple
Mm,
courage of saying, "Hey, I'm going through this," allows someone else to mirror neuron back to you and say, "Oh, I went through the same thing," or "I have a friend who went through the same thing." We are so connected. We forget how closely connected and
mm,
tied we are as a community, as a
mm,
species. And so
mhm,
the situations we
mm,
find ourselves in, whether it's bullying or a miscarriage or a bad marriage, we're all experiencing something similar. It may not be the same, but
mm,
empathy abounds.
mm,
And the moment we take the
mm.
courage to ask for help, to share our
Yeah.
pain, all of a sudden, all of that empathy can flow back to us. But it's when we hold it like this and keep
Mhm,
it a secret and think we need to figure it out ourselves
mhm,
that this starts to rot.
mhm.
It's when we open our hand that we can
Yeah.
get touched.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it
I
may
love
even
that.
be
Uh,
interspecial. Chloe, I don't know how much you talk about Apollo on here. Your dog. We have cats. There are, horses. There are. I got this bird right here. There are, other places we may not be ready for this side of the spectrum. And so we may start something else that truly gives us some comfort and helps us get a little bit of abstraction so we can have a little more awareness of what's going on and start to build towards understanding. Uh, yeah, so it could be interspecial.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
It could be
Okay. So we're coming
Wilson,
to the
the
close
soccer
of
ball
our.
in
Yeah, the
in Strand
volleyballs.
in right,
Yes.
Wilson.
Wilson. Find Wilson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're coming to the close. What is a word of advice, encouragement, wisdom that you want to share with people listening that's saying, I just really needed to hear this conversation? What would that be?
I think the prospect of living a shrunken life because of someone else who's trying to be bigger than me is is terrifying. Because not only am I enabling my own shrink, I am also enabling this bully's shrinkage. There is a potential that they are not living out by focusing on making me small. And I think liberation is collective. When this
Mm,
dyad of bully and bullied is broken, the bully has to reckon with themselves just as much as I do about why I was allowing the bullying to take place.
mm,
And I think that reckoning it comes down to, in my opinion, it comes back to the question of, who do I think I am? Do I think I deserve this,
mm.
or do I think I do not?
Yeah.
The moment I say
Yeah.
I do not,
Mm.
all of a sudden, yep.
It's gone. There's that becomes hopeless, and then you back in the
Hmm.
cycle. Understanding who and affirming, believing and affirming who you are, looking in the mirror and saying, this is who
Hmm.
I am. Just like how that bully is being saying things and over, so you're so rewired that you believe it. We have to be able to find an inner friend. I say there's an inner critic and an inner friend, and make up our own narrative, a new
Mm.
narrative. It's the only way that we can hack and mess up the corrupt system of our thoughts.
Yeah, as I was listening to you, KJ, someone who's being bullied asking themselves the question, who am I? What am I up to? What am I allowing to happen? This just could inspire the bully to say the same thing. You mentioned being black and all that comes with that and all the history that comes with that. Well, I'm the white guy on the call. I got to own up to what my people did. We created all this mess, and that is really painful. Uh, And it's the only way that it stops. What am I doing? All those bullies out there, when they come to that moment of what am I doing? What have I been doing? Devastating and so important. So important to that. So when Chloe, you said what do I want to say? Is it someone who's being bullied? I want to say probably to bully and bully victim. Like, I am sorry. I'm sorry that this is happening to you. You don't deserve this. Nobody deserves this. You don't have to endure this. It's not your fault that you have for 5 minutes or 5 years or 50 years. And you're not alone. On the spectrum, people have been micro bullied to macro mega bullied. And our shared humanity is in that. And I would say the same thing for the bully. I'm sorry, you don't deserve to be finding yourself in a position where you're doing this. And there is help, and there's a much better life out there for you.
Yeah. Wow. This was really, really deep. Um, I love this. The series before this was called Boundlessness of the Soul. And that's what I'm hearing now. It's the spectrum, because the boundlessness is the spectrum. It's all things. Everybody has a journey, and we all are interconnected. Yes, we all are community, and we're supposed to be there for each other. Thank you both for being on the show. And next week we have one more episode. I'm hoping the both of you can make it back, and maybe Julie as well. So thank you. And thank you, everyone out there, for listening into this conversation. Really powerful. And before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with something to think about. Reflect on a time when someone made you doubt yourself. What was actually going on beneath their words and their actions? What really was happening? And what is something that you can do or could have done to reach out, to ask for help, to reach out to community, like we talked about? What if, instead of taking their words as truth, you saw them as a mirror of their own fears? How would that change it for you? So next time we're shifting gears, and now that we've identified the ways we shrink and the people who try to make us feel small, it's time to talk about how do we expand instead of shrink. So get ready for the expansion story. Take care, everybody.